Well, welcome to the webinar today. I have Geoff Lawton with me. He is a permaculture expert and he has been involved in permaculture for many, many years. I'm not going to go into all of his background, but let's just say he's got a lot of experience and he knows what he's talking about. So welcome to the call today, Geoff.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So the first question I want to ask you is a real basic question. What is permaculture? So I want to, some people might know and they've done permaculture courses and they know exactly what it is, and there could be other people that I hear what it is but I actually don't know. So let's just imagine I've just walked out the front door of my level 34 apartment in Sydney. I haven't got any lawn or grass, so permaculture is not on my radar. How would you explain it to someone that doesn't have a gardening or farming background?
All right. Permaculture is a system of design, right? And it's about the way you can design your life so it's beneficial to the environment in a way where you understand where your resources really come from that are needed for you to exist. So the first thing permaculture does is give you a realization of what your actual footprint is. So you know what it then takes to actually run your life and what you can do to make a change. So it is about farming, it is about gardening, it is about food supply. It's also about your general energy requirements. It's about your living environment. It's about your level of understanding your supply lines. So you could say it's an ethical design science because, of course, it's organic. And, of course, it's all about sustainability because what we're all interested in today is, are we going to have a future for our children and grandchildren, or is it going to be a real mess? And why have we let it get to that situation? So it's a thinking man's game. If there's one thing common about permaculture people is they like to think through the issues. So permaculture gives you a framework of design so you can think your way through the world's problems on a personal level. So if you're a farmer, it's often, or a gardener, it's often about relating to the natural system and how that works and how you can work with it in a non-sentimental way, in a in a way that you're not prejudiced about the elements you use, but how you put them together so they function like a natural system, sustainably and in a way that builds fertility and doesn't destroy the environment. So all of a sudden you feel very meaningful. You think, I can feel meaningful with this. This gives me an angle of approach. I can use this as a framework to see the world. So young people love it because it gives them hope. And older people can reflect on their experiences and say, yeah, there's lots of things I can see in old-fashioned wisdom married to new technology. So we're not technophobic. We like technology. We use appropriate technology. We use all kinds of combinations of living elements to make very unique, productive environments. Right up to designing communities. We're designing, villages and towns and cities. We're involved in town planning. All those sort of, from the largest to the smallest of human endeavors, permaculture is now a framework used by designers to check that it's something we're developing with the most care and the most efficiency so that we get the best sustainable result. It's all about sustainable results.
Yeah, so one thing you said, as large or small. So obviously on a large scale would be designing a community where you've got housing and everything. So tell me a few examples of small, because I love things that can be scaled up but also scaled down. So tell me, I suppose back to the apartment example, if someone's got an apartment, they've got a balcony, they might be able to put 10 small pots of herbs or something. How could they use the permaculture framework to look at the space they do have?
Well, I have a student in Sydney that actually uses a 20 square metre balcony, 5 stories up in the air, and she produces 70 kilos of food a year. So that's 3.5 kilos a square metre. That's doing pretty well. You couldn't do that on a farm. So the intensity of the small space and the intensity of attention and attention to detail in the small space gets you a lot more production. But she also feels guilty about her energy use and where she's living. She can't change that. So she catches public transport more than she drives a car, and she walks or she rides a bike, and she tries to cut down on her energy use and uses efficient appliances, minimizes her water use, and feels really good about it. And is quite proud of her production on a 20 square metre balcony, and it's quite okay to stay there. That's for her enough of a change in her life that she feels like she's part of the solution instead of part of the problem, and encourages other people to do the same. Where other people may get introduced to permaculture and they're in the apartment, they make a few moves, they love the engagement, they learn from those micro engagements. Say, I'd like to get a larger garden or a small acreage or even a farm. Now, every time you step up in size, there's a different scale of approach. So it becomes then strategic. It's not just how you do it, but it's how and when you do it, because you're scaling, you're going up in scale. So there's probably a limit. I think that the smallest limit I've had is someone doing permaculture in a prison cell. Who was incarcerated in prison and was writing to me and wanted to use permaculture in his prison life until he got out.
Okay.
And constraining, of course.
Oh, wow. Okay. So with permaculture in a farm or garden setting, how do you give me a few examples of chickens? Like I'm the chicken man, as some people like to call me. And the thing I like about the permaculture approach, and I'll just stop here and say I'm not a permaculture expert, and I'm not a cell grazing expert. I know about permaculture, I know about cell grazing. I'm not a vet, so people could come to me and goes, I don't have all the answers, but this is what I love. We'll talk about technology. I can talk to Geoff here, and you are an expert, and like someone that wants to know something about cell grazing, go to a cell grazing expert and whatever. So, but of what I do know about permaculture, and one thing I love is the approach where I've heard that people have got chickens and they've come from a permaculture framework, like you're saying, Geoff, and they're like, okay, we need something to eat some bugs and beetles and scratch the cow pats and do certain things. And then right at the end, it's like, oh yeah, and that they will produce eggs. The eggs is like the last thing, where a lot of a commercial approach to chickens is like, I need eggs. Where do eggs come from? Chickens. I need chickens. And that's like the approach. But I love it when it comes from the other way, to say all the benefit of what these chickens will do on a farm or something. And then, by the way, they also produce eggs. And it really, it changed my thinking. Realised that, and I say to people now, like, some people could get into farming for 100 different reasons. You think, oh, they want to buy chickens just to be egg farmers. Some people buy chickens because they want to have a future for their children, and that's something that works on their farm, or they want to increase fertility. So I'd like to hear from you about permaculture. It's not just gardens and growing plants, but you can use animals and specifically chickens. So a few examples of what you've done yourself, or you've seen others, how they've brought chickens in, not just as a standalone thing, but how it incorporates in some of the benefits that has brought to farms and gardens of all sizes.
Yeah, well, I think chickens are a gateway animal to all domestic livestock, because it's usually the first animal that anybody gets is chickens. And And they are one of the oldest, not the oldest, but nearly the oldest domesticated animal. And they all come from one bird, which is still alive, of course, the Malay jungle fowl, and it's still wild in Southeast Asia. So we've bred all these birds, and they've integrated true community everywhere. They are the most integrated domestic animal, and there was more of them once through all of our cities. I always remember waking up in Skopje, the capital of Macedonia, where I was doing some aid work in the Kosovo crisis, to the sound of thousands of chickens across a capital city. And I thought, that's the sound of sustainability. I better get up and have a look. And I walked around at dawn, couldn't believe how many food plants and fruit trees were in people's gardens. But what gave me the clue to that was the sound of roosters crowing. And so they are very much a gateway animal, but they do so much. And there's a very good reason for that. And eggs are such a good food for a start. I mean, you've got to look at eggs as one of the great foods, because you don't need a refrigerator to keep them, right? They'll keep outside the refrigerator, so they don't take a lot of energy to store. And you can eat them if you haven't got teeth, whether you're a baby or you're an elderly person. You know, they're a very edible food. So it's kind of like a foundation stone in a sustainability wall. It's one of the great foods. But chickens are like large birds that have little pitchforks for legs. They continuously scratch with those 3 claws, and they live to scratch. Now, because of that, they're continuously breaking down organic matter. And when you start to combine that with what they can do, whether it's scratching cowpats or whether it's preparing a garden. So we use chickens to tractor the land to plant a garden. We use chickens to tractor land to plant forestry and food forestry. We use chickens to actually manage pasture and control increase the fertility, but also control pest problems in pasture, control pest problems in gardens. Now, obviously, you can't put a chicken into a mature garden. It will scratch out the vegetables. But you can do preparation prior to it. So it's strategic again. It's timing. Yeah. We also deep litter chickens, which is an very old system, where we put large amounts of mixed mulch and straws and hay into a chicken pen and let them scratch it through and manure it for a week to 10 days or 2 weeks. And then we pull it out as a matured, high quality, high nutrient mulch, or an ingredient ready to create high quality compost. We've also, in recent years, made compost with chickens. So I came across a gentleman in Vermont, in the USA, Carl Hammer, who was processing very large amounts of compost with 300 to 1,000 chickens. It depended what time of year. He was processing animal manure, vegetable waste, like grass and straws, and food scraps. And he was not feeding his chickens. He was feeding his chickens with the composting process, which was amazing. Now, he didn't have massive egg counts, but he had incredible compost. So by compensating your egg count, you can actually remove the need to feed chickens, because it can be very expensive to feed chickens. You can have a very high feed bill, especially if you want to be organic. So ways that you can compensate the feed bill if you're getting multiple jobs done by the chicken. That's very permaculture, to actually use every element to do more than one job and to have every job performed by more than one element. That's how nature works. Nature doesn't have singular elements doing singular jobs. Every element in nature does more than one job, and every job is done by more than one element. So I can put chickens to about 5 or 6 different jobs, and they love to do them all. I don't force them to do jobs they don't like to do. They love all those different jobs. So there are not many farm animals that you can do that with. There are not many domestic animals that have that many applications that you can put them to work. And they love that work. And they do it better than I can do it. I mean, I don't like weeding gardens. They love weeding gardens. I don't want to eat bugs and pests. They eat them all the time. I don't want to eat weed seeds. They do it all the time. I have to reassemble compost, because what they do is we make a compost pile and they disassemble it. They tear it apart. We put it back together and they tear it apart. We put it back together, they tear it apart. We do that every week for 5 weeks. We've got compost. That's 5 turns in 5 weeks, or 5 turns in 35 days. That's about as efficient a way you can make compost anywhere. That means I'm making organic fertilizer. Now, that organic fertilizer could be used to make a supplementary feed for the chickens, if you like, or for us, or any other component. When you put an element like a chicken to work in many different ways, it opens up your options of production. And this is what, to be sustainable, we have to stop the monoculture so much and think, how can we have a diverse production where if one thing's down, another thing's up? So it's more of a balance, because anybody who's farmed or even gardened knows it doesn't all run true to the textbook. There are drier years, there are wetter years, there are colder years, there are pest problems at times. There are things that need to come into balance as you build fertility, and you often give up before you get to the perfect garden or farm. If you have elements like chickens that you can put into so many different uses. Now, I have to mention here that this has changed since those electric net fences have come in. Because now it's technology. Now it's a marriage of technology to an ancient domestic animal. Got an electric solar fence that will go anywhere. And we've learned to tie them down over very rough landscapes, because we're not often as straight a paddock as a lot of cell grazing chicken farmers. We're going up over swales and water systems and around strange landscapes. So we pin them down and we strain them with big elastic bands, which we make out of recycled car inner tubes. We cut inner tubes into little strips, keeping them in a circle, and then tie them together as spring-loaded shock absorbers to our electric fences. These are just little adaptations. So the interesting thing here is, and I have some figures on this, with one of your chicken tractor 30s, right, just one, fully loaded with 30 chickens, I can fertilize 1/4 acre with 50 cubic meters of compost a year. I can produce 1 cubic meter of compost a year by putting the chickens into action. And that 1/4 acre will, in Australia, just about turn over $1,000 to $1,200 a week. 1/4 acre. Yeah. If you scale that up to the 130, right, the larger chicken caravan, you're starting to fertilize a whole acre with 400 cubic meters compost a year. Yeah. And if you can do it, you can't fail as a crop farmer if you're putting that much compost on. This is what people have to realize. If you focus the fertility of the chickens and add a little bit of large animal manure and crop waste or weed waste or food waste, you make high quality fertilizer, and they love doing it. And I've had the regional vet come, as you do now and again as a farmer. Something dies, you're allowed to bring the regional vet in to get it checked out. And he's looked my chickens over and he said, the chickens that are running on compost and are free ranging through our gardens are the healthiest chickens he knows in our region. They look better than any other chickens because they're just living a natural life. They're doing what they love to do. While we're getting eggs, or while we're breeding out, we're growing out meat birds, because we use the chicken caravan for both, not just eggs. We actually incubate first cross hybrid chickens, so they put on weight faster. One large rooster with different large hen breeds, and then our eggs are first cross, and we get organic farmyard chickens in 16 weeks. So, and because that's an organic price, it's an okay time. Otherwise you've got to be 8 weeks in a factory with all the other additives that you have to put in. But ours are just completely natural, and they live in a very natural life. So that's permaculture, assembling elements together, technology, animals, plants, landscape, so that we get more than one job done and we have more potential than just being locked into one production mode of operation.
Mm. Yeah, a few years ago, I was over in Western Australia seeing a client, and he had chickens, and I didn't really know how his whole operation worked, but he had an apple orchard, and I looked around and go, where are your chicken feeders? And he said, "I'll watch this." So he said, "We don't have chicken feeders." He gets a bucket of grain, scoops some chicken pellets, and he throws the chicken pellets and hits the trunk of the apple tree, and then they like fall into the grass. And he said those chickens, they will now scratch to go for that chicken pellets, but he said they're actually picking up, and I don't know the technical name, but they're picking up this apple grub that goes up the apple tree and then into the apples. And he said before the chickens, the measurement was like 100 grubs per test or whatever, and then after the chickens, the test was like 16. So like it reduced it by like 80% just by using chickens, as you said, that are willing to do it anyway. It's like, yeah, we'll go find our food, and if we see a grub, we want to eat that thing. And he can now run a certified organic apple orchard without spraying things, just by moving the chickens around and flicking the feed under the trees. And I was like, this is incredible, like, but just so basic as well.
Codlin moth, that would be codlin moth. And fruit fly is the same. Fruit fly stings the tree, the fruit falls off, the grub incubates in the ground, pupates in the ground. So if you drag, say, one of the chicken caravans through an orchard, they'll actually control all of those bugs in the ground by directing the food towards the individual trees in the region. Then you move them on, so they go right through your orchard. And you can also have a free-range system like that with a compost creation as well. So they can do that, and they can rake the compost, and you'll leave a pile of compost behind you as you move the chicken tractor through the system, the chicken caravan. And then that compost goes to improve the soil around each tree. So they can be doing that job and leaving high-quality fertilizer by design. You'll have to do it. You'll have to assemble it. They'll disassemble it. You put it back together. 5 weeks later, you keep moving it along. They won't go back. They're not interested in finished compost. They're 100% interested in brand new compost because it's got fruit and food scraps. They're a week later, they're 75% interested. 3 weeks later, they're 50%. 4 weeks later, they're 20%. 5 weeks later, they're 10%. After that, not interested. But they are eating something that you can't see in those older composts. You can't see what they're eating. I mean, I'd love to know what it is, but they're eating things too small for our eyes to see, and I think that's adding a value to their manure at the other end. Yeah. And they've got a very unusual, I mean, chickens have a very unusual intestinal tract, so they don't urinate. It comes out as a package. Yeah. So it's one package, and it's a very acidic environment it comes out of, and it quickly starts alkalizing when it comes outside. And I think there's all kinds of inoculums when they're eating bugs and they're eating bacteria. I think they're inoculating the ground beneficially. Not a lot of research done on that yet. But these are very interesting processes because there is no other animal that does what a chicken does. The same amount of scratch.
And I love what you say, how they disassemble like a compost pile. Like I know years ago I had a truckload of like wood chip, like that's gone through like a wood chipper from the tree loppers, and it's sitting up there, and then the chickens start getting in, and it's reasonably fresh, and you look there a few weeks later, and the pile that used to be like this is just suddenly like, it's just sort of a soft mound, but they're just in there, and as you said, they love it. It's not like we have to motivate them, hey, can you please go over there? They're just like, let us at this like all day, every day, and they don't get tired. It's not like, oh yeah, we've got to go sit under a tree, we're tired. They're just there, as you said, using those pitchforks, just scratching it through. So, yeah, I love seeing what you do and other people, what they are doing, like Carl Hammer, what they're doing with chickens and compost. So I think I'd love to see over the next 10 years more people adapting to that, rather than go, well, no, I just have a compost facility or I just have a chicken facility. If we can facilitate more people bringing that together, whether it's on a small scale with 30 chickens or on a larger scale with a few hundred, as you said, you're not going to fail out in the paddock with your crops if you've got these compost piles, whether it's sitting in your orchard or if it's sitting just on pasture that it gets spread through. It's all just going to come back to, just goodness for the soil and earthworms and all the rest of it. I think it's fantastic just seeing the compost chickens, experiments of what people are doing and also perfecting it of like what's the best time frame, what's the best ingredients and that. I think we've done a lot on it, but I think there's still so much more we can learn to perfect it and scale it, whether we scale it up or down. It's exciting. I want to do more of it over the next 5 and 10 years.
Yeah, and there are particular perennial feeds that can be introduced, like leucaena, honey locust, and other trees that have seed that, as long as they've got shell grit, they can break down those hard seeds. So, of course, you can plant grains for chickens or sunflowers and things, but there are actually long-living trees that you can include in and around chicken systems. So they can be on a pasture, and that pasture can have the trees that the seeds are edible to the chickens, but also the foliage is edible to the cows.
Yes.
So you can get combinations. You can even get some that are very good timbers. The honey locust is one of them. You can get a thornless honey locust. It doesn't have to be the thorny type. These are all, if we really want to be truly sustainable and have a very productive supply line to humanity, we just have to think about these integrations.
Yeah.
I really can't think of another element that's more integrated already than the chicken.
Yeah. And
I don't think there's an element that has more potential to be more integrated. The reason it's so integrated is because it is so many different potentials, but we could take it a lot further. We could automate a lot of this as you've already done, but we could take that automation even further and still produce a better life for chickens.
Yeah.
I mean, there is no comparison between these open range chickens and factory chickens, none whatsoever.
Yeah.
There is no comparison. From the chicken's point of view, I know where we'd win the vote.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Would you rather be in a cage or a barn or out there in pasture scratching through some compost in the sun? You see the happiness of the chicken, and I hate seeing these reports, and I don't know who they're funded by, and they're like, oh, we've done this report and we've determined that the chickens don't really like going outside. And then I looked a bit deeper of the chickens have to have like an RFID tag on their leg, and they've got to walk through this, it's probably like an MRI scan or something to get outside just so they can measure it. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, just like press record on a camera, open up a chicken caravan and watch them come out and then survey like how many are still inside. Like,
Yeah. I mean, when you see them in the food forests here, they look like a natural flock of birds.
Yeah.
They're definitely behaving in their most natural way. And we notice all kinds of behaviours because we also, when we're on the food forest, we've actually got cockerels in there with them.
Yeah.
Where a lot of time our egg layers are just hens. So you're seeing a whole different behaviour when the cockerel is there defensive, the rooster's there defending them all.
Yeah.
See pre-scratching sometimes for the hens.
Yeah.
We do a lot of observation. We're pretty sure of what we're seeing. We're seeing a potential for literally food security for the world with the integration of the chicken through these systems. I'm very, very confident that the systems we've got for producing compost to small crops through chickens can supply most of the world with organic food.
Yeah, wow.
around, as long as we don't have to travel a long way, as long as they're around urban systems, perimeter urban agriculture like this, you know, the amount of fertility we've built over 12 years in one of our gardens here running these systems it's something people are very envious of. You can't put a fork in the ground without finding hundreds of earthworms.
Yeah.
Because the earthworms do exist below the chicken scratch. I've always noticed this. No matter how many chickens you've got on the top, over the top of mulch and ground, at the level they can't scratch you is a proliferation of earthworms.
Yeah.
Because the bacteria that live on the manure of the chickens are the ones that the earthworms feed on.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point, because chickens do eat worms, but they, as you're saying they don't dig up to the depths to get the worms. So just if someone's thinking, oh, I want more worms in my soil, are chickens going to take that away? Not the case. They're going to add to it, because, as you said, they're actually below that line, and just the nutrients that they help create up top is going to create more of an environment for those earthworms.
Yeah, in our deep litter, we have a deep litter pen that's 8 meters long by 2 meters wide for an urban system.
Yep.
And it's 300 mil deep in mulch, and it's emptied every 2 weeks. When we extract it, if we go down another ½ inch into the soil, it's all earthworms. The whole thing's earthworms. The chickens never get to that lower layer. Now, whether it's the chickens not making it or earthworms knowing how far they've got to go, I don't know, but it works. They're there.
So tell me about that system. So you put fresh mulch in every 2 weeks, or what's the actual deep litter made of? Are we talking like grass clippings or wood chip?
We have a forage harvester takes the materials off the paddock. So it's just hay, really. It's grass, fine chopped hay. Yep. And we put it in. Actually, it's the pen that they fill is 6 meters long by 2 meters wide, and it's 300 mil deep.
Okay.
So 2 cubic meters come out and 2 cubic meters go in, and it comes out not as compost, but as a material that will compost very quickly, because it's been turned over and manured by the chickens, and it doesn't look the same. It's very dark, and it quickly heats up as a compost ingredient. So we use that as you can use it directly as a fertilizer mulch, but you can process it quite quickly to compost. So
when you take that out, are you just piling that up straight away, or are you adding stuff to that before you make a compost pile?
You can pile that up straight away and then just turn it over a few times, and it will make compost by itself. Or you can add to it. You can do either.
Geoff, one thing I like about you give away a lot of information. You film videos as well of what you do on your farm, and I'll put links below this video of to your farm and to your pages. But you've put 4 videos together for people wanting to know more about permaculture. So you've got Green is the New Silver, Lining from Exploitation to Regeneration. Third one's an Urban Food Forest and Therapy Garden. And then your last one, Permaculture's Origin Story, Mollison's PDM. Tell me about these videos, why you created them, and also who they're for. Like, are they people that are experts at permaculture or people that are just starting? Like, how can people benefit from this information?
Well, we tried to show a cross-section. The first one sort of shows the dilemma we're in with modern farming. And it's kind of like a crisis and situation that we need to realize that we're losing soil fertility, and the efficiency is dropping over the area. And in other words, the amount of energy we're having to put into our supply lines is much higher than the energy we get out. And that's unsustainable. Yeah. We have to have systems that produce more energy than they consume so that they can go on. So the first video explains that and talks about what we can do, what the options are, and how we approach it. And then we go right down to a very, very small garden that's 64 square meters. And we explain how one student, who's a pharmacologist, turned this very small area into an extremely productive urban food forest that produces the equivalent of 13.5 tons of food per acre per year. And how he actually did that in such a small space, and it sort of explains that the most productive area is the smallest, and some of the best quality food can be grown in the small spaces. Yeah. And then we go on to another garden where someone's was gardening for themselves, but realised that they needed an extra income, and they didn't realise the value of their product, and that in itself became a therapy that they didn't really need to go out to work. They could actually use their produce by just putting up a little bit more production, and they created an income. How to make an income out of a small to large garden size. And then our videos are really like, it's a little masterclass in 4 videos, so people can realize the potential of permaculture and how it applies to so many different aspects of our lives and how we work with our production systems. So we've tried to do a cross-section, and we've also looked at the origins. We've shown the origins of permaculture and how it's developed over time and how it's changed in history, because we've been going nearly 40 years of design, and it's covered every country in the world now. There's permaculture systems right across the world, and there's organizations right across the world. And how now it's sort of accepted. It's on most gardening programs. It's on television. We're working for governments, we're working for large aid organizations, how it's now recognized as a design system approach. And now you can overlay it over almost everything that humanity is engaged in to come up with a more sustainable result, an intentional direction of sustainability. So I released all of those previews online, and then if you go into Geoff Lawton online as a website, you can put in your email address and you can see all of the videos we produce for free, and these 4 recent ones are right at the top of the list. So we give away enormous amounts of video information, and we make it available to anybody who wants to sign up to our website system. And then we send you whatever's new, whatever's coming out, whatever's happening, including our new courses, which we do online.
Yeah. So tell me about your permaculture design course and how you do it online now. Because please explain, what is a permaculture design course if someone's never heard about that?
Well, because it's quite a complex subject and it covers many disciplines. To become a designer, you have to understand how all the different disciplines connect, landscape, forms, and climate. It's no good designing a system unless you very accurately understand the climate specifics of where the location is and the landscape specifics. Otherwise, you're kind of designing out of focus. And then we go on to water systems and soil systems and different landscape design types. So the Permaculture Design Certificate course originally was a 72-hour course that goes for 2 weeks, and it gave you the right to use the word permaculture in all your advertising, call yourself a permaculture designer, and understand exactly what it is to design and consult for other people, or understand how to design for yourself. Permaculture wherever you live. Even if you change climate and change landscape, you can still have a full understanding of how to apply the design approach to anything that you do or anything people want you to consult on. So we usually taught that. I've taught most of my courses over the years face-to-face, and I still do 1 or 2. But since this technology came out with online teaching, and we were able to supply more information in less time, and people can watch an online lesson and they can rewind, they can watch it again. Or they can stop and say, what did he just say? Let me look back up on Wikipedia, or I'm online now anyway, or let me look up in dictionary, what does that word mean, or whatever.
Yeah.
You can replay the videos, and we then can supply extra reading material or extra videos or extra footage. So in my online course, I can provide 20 times more available information. I've got over 800 videos, and 300 of those are animations of the lessons, very nice cartoon animations we've done to simplify the lesson.
Yeah.
We've got infographics that people get to keep. So it's like a giant digital reference material. Now, I didn't know whether it was going to work or not, but I share the course around the world. So you're taking a course with an international group of students, and we have a forum running underneath every lesson, which is high quality forum. It's in a program called Discuss. The lessons are in Kajabi. It's one of the best platforms, but we've married that with Discuss. So you ask questions underneath.
Yeah.
I've got 12 teachers' assistants helping me answer all the questions. And then we run Q&As of all the best questions each week and put them out every week. So you hear questions that other people and how I would answer those questions. My TA answers questions, or my 12 TAs answer questions. So we can really, really service people. And over the last 3 years, we've answered 23,000 questions.
Wow.
And we've collated all those with software, and we've got the top question, the hit parade of questions, and we've put a smart software over that. So if you start to ask one of those questions, it pre-answers you. So it's just a matter of the technology's allowed us to service our students better, and we can see the result. We can see the result in our students. We can see that the students we're producing now are getting jobs. They're getting employment. They're producing better design exercises. We've got an employment software where we've got 26,000 jobs on average related to permaculture put out every month for our students free of charge. Yeah. Most of it is American software. Most of it's American, but we're trying to get it global.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of it's service, graphics, and people don't mind, or they seem quite happy to socialize online. So it's kind of like we've got our own little permaculture social media going on during the course.
Yeah.
And we have a course Facebook page running at the same time. So enormous amount of sharing of information between our students and from us to our students.
Yeah.
And I can't teach any better. I've taught a lot of courses. I've produced a lot of active people, but I've never made a larger jump than into the online software that we have today, and we're improving it all the time. So I've been able to produce 50 years with the students every year for 4 years. So I'm sort of 200 years in front, face-to-face teaching. So I'm happy with that. And I know my students, the endorsements are incredible. I'm really happy to be able to bring this information to people faster and more efficiently.
Yeah, I just love just technology. And I look just like here we are, 2019, and just 10 years ago, where it was more like the start of social media, or still gaining traction when you look back on the YouTubes and the Facebooks and such. And looking at farming back then, sort of when I was sort of getting started, and the collaboration was where you'd probably have to go to a farm and sort of start networking, and the person that knew the answer, he could be the other side of the room, and you may not have networked with him. But just seeing the online of the collaboration, because now distance it's just not there. So, and I love this. I don't have to come up to your farm today and get a camera, which I used to do. I would literally fly to Western Australia with my camera gear to do an interview, and now it's like, well, we can just do it online, and we've just saved like days and days of travel, and just to be able to share information. And that's where I'm excited about the next 10 years, because suddenly what you're doing with chickens and compost and you're filming, someone picks up on that and go, hey, look, I do it with a different material, and they publish it. And then this collaboration of information, it just accelerates us all so fast, where you just didn't see that back in the 90s. You could be doing your own thing for 10 years, and then it's just like, oh, hang on, you've been doing the same thing for 10 years. And as soon as those two connect, it's just the exponential information growth. So I'm excited about it. I love it just in my networks, like talking to some of our clients and just little changes. And I love the saying, it's like small hinges swing big doors. Just little changes can make massive differences. So, yeah.
I can put visuals up while I'm teaching, which my editors do. So if I'm talking about chicken caravan, it's on the screen while they're listening to me.
Yeah.
So my editors edit into my lessons. You're not always looking at me.
Yeah.
There's beautiful footage going through,
Yeah.
and that's better quality than you could ever imagine. And it can often be filmed with a phone.
Yes.
So that's not possible. 10 years ago, you wouldn't even dreamt that was going to be possible.
Yeah.
I look forward to working with people like yourself, so we can move these innovations forward, because it just improves the world and improves our supply lines, and that's what we have to do to make the world the beautiful, abundant place it can be. It doesn't have to be the mess it is. And when you see the news, there's plenty of people that also have the same intention.
Yes.
And the majority, I think, of the world would say, if I knew about this, I'd support it. And they need to know. So we're letting a lot of people know this is possible.
Yeah, excellent. All right, for the sake of time, I think I will wrap it up there. Under this video, if you're watching, I will share the links to Geoff's videos. They're free to view, so please go through them. There's 4 of them. There's a masterclass. And there's details on that page if you want to find out more about what Geoff is doing. There's more details on that. And any questions from what we've talked about today, please put in the comments. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, please put in the comments, and either I'll answer them, or if we've got some ones that I don't know, I'll shoot them through to Geoff and get your questions answered. So I hope you've really enjoyed this, everyone. And Geoff, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.